whenever there's trouble, G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe, American hero.
In 1987, Hasbro's G.I. Joe line was in full force, and Hasbro was hard at work on their Series 6 action figure line for the year. To come up with a plan for what figures Hasbro would do for the new series, they took a look back to a figure from the Series 2 1983 line. That figure was Gung-Ho. Rather than just re-release the figure, they decided to give the figure an update, this time giving the figure a formal military attire. But there was a slight issue with this plan, one that Hasbro didn't like. Earlier that year, a new line of action figures had hit stores, and Hasbro felt the name of that action figure line was too similar. That action figure line, made by the small toy company Lanard Toys, had released Gung-Ho, the action figure line. These action figures were the same style and the same size of the Hasbro G.I. Joe line, and that was just too much of a similarity for Hasbro. Not only did they feel that the Gung-Ho action figures were trying to cash in on the success of their G.I. Joe line, but they were also trying to cash in on one of the names from the G.I. Joe line, Gung-Ho. Lanard Toys, a Hong Kong-based toy company, was trying to make their way into the U.S. market. In 1986, they had $10 million in sales and was hoping to grow a foothold in the U.S. toy market. In May of 1986, they hired a U.S. toy designer to create a line of action figures to compete with Remco, the leading U.S. toy company for cheap toys. Remco was having success in the cheap toy market with their line of U.S. Force action figures. Remco and Lanard would save money by selling their toys to smaller chain retails, and they would save money by not doing promotions and not producing figures on a per-order basis. This allowed them to sell their figures at half the price of Hasbro and other bigger toy companies. The toy designer came up with the name Gung-Ho and worked on the figure line from May to December 1986. In a court filing, he admitted that he knew of the G.I. Joe line, and he had some of the G.I. Joe figures and Hasbro toy catalogs to use as a reference when making the Gung-Ho line. Lanard Toys, not wanting to go bankrupt fighting other toy companies, did a trademark search for the name Gung-Ho and found no prior use of the name in the toy industry. So Lanard was ready and showed off his 12 action figures in 2 vehicles in January 1987 at the New York City Toy Fair, and had their first batch of Gung-Ho action figures in stores by the end of that month. In August 1987, Hasbro filed a lawsuit claiming common law unfair competition. On the 26th, Lanard filed to have the lawsuit removed. One of the first rulings of the court was to determine if Hasbro's unregistered Gung-Ho was entitled to protection under the Lanham Act, which is a federal statute that governs trademarks, service marks, and unfair competition. Hasbro would argue that the term Gung-Ho was well known to the G.I. Joe line, therefore would be protected under the Lanham Act. Lanard Toys would argue that the name does lean heavily to the military, but not to the G.I. Joe brand. They would also argue that the Hasbro figure was named R. Lafitte, and only its codename was Gung-Ho. Also that Gung-Ho was a motto used during World War II, and not something invented by Hasbro.
Oh yeah, my code name.
Y'all hear that? We use the code names.
The court ruled that Gung-Ho was suggestive of the military and held that Hasbro was entitled to the Lanham Act protection. The second decision of the court was to see if there was a likelihood that the buyers would be confused in thinking that this was a G.I. Joe toy. The court determined there was not enough evidence to reach that determination. However, the court did state that there was a likelihood of confusion and could harm the G.I. Joe brand. With the court's ruling that the term Gung-Ho was suggestive to the military, like the G.I. Joe action figure line, and the Gung-Ho action figure line by Lanard Toys was, as the package said, International Security Force, not military. Hasbro walked away from court a winner, and Lanard Toys was forced to end its new action figure line. However, after some retooling, Lanard Toys returned to the toy stores with the core action figure line, a line of action figures that was so successful it lasted until 2018. Lanard Toys is best known today as that toy company that sells those Kenner-style aliens with the odd colors at Walmart. Well, that's the story of the Gung-Ho courtroom battle. Well, I want to thank you for watching. As always, please subscribe to the channel, thumb up so I know you like my content, and we'll talk again soon.
G.I. Joe!
Junkman.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.